to the Healthy, Wild, and Free podcast. My name is David Benjamin. I'm your host and the founder of HealthyWildandFree.com. If you're like me, you understand that health, the mind, body, spirit, heart connection, and living a green, eco-friendly, sustainable lifestyle are some of the most valuable and life-enhancing lessons that we can learn and pass on to our children to live happy and abundant lives. That's why this podcast was created, to help you grow in these areas. If you aren't already subscribed to the newsletter, go to HealthyWildandFree.com, click the box at the top right-hand corner to get a free copy of our latest ebook, and you'll be subscribed to be notified about future podcasts. Thanks for subscribing and tuning in. Enjoy. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is David Benjamin from HealthyWildandFree.com, your host of the Healthy, Wild, and Free podcast. Today on the show, we have a guest who's going to be talking about paleo, the paleo diet, and what it means, and how it can help you in your health and wellness. Husband and father to 3 magnificent daughters, he's the author of the Paleo Coach. He's the owner of the Clackamas Physical Conditioning, Clackamas Physical Conditioning in Oregon. I hope I said that right. And partner on the Everyday Paleo team with Sarah Fragoso. And after his wife, the 3 little girls, fitness and nutrition are unparalleled passions in his life. He'd prefer to read studies and scientific articles than do pretty much anything else that might occupy his time, with the exception of applying his knowledge to help people reach their goals. He takes great pleasure in playing the role of the heretic. Mainstream nutrition and fitness are so badly broken that the scientific truths about health, fitness, and weight loss are mere opposites of accepted, quote-unquote, common knowledge. And he loves helping people find those truths. Empowering people with much-needed new perspective is how he gets his kicks, and his success rate with the frustrated fat loss crowd is proof that life is good for this fitness and nutrition geek. I'm going to put him on the call right now. And Jason, are you there?
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How you doing, Doug?
Fantastic.
Glad to hear.
Hey, but sorry.
Thanks for joining us so early. I know it's like 7 a.m. your time, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
So I kind of wanted to start the interview out with asking you, how did you originally get into the health and then kind of fitness realm and space? What kind of interested you in it originally?
Well, I guess I was in dire need of a life change myself. I'm one of those kids who was, I was a bad kid when I was a teenager, and I just needed a change of space in my head and my habits. And I was about 20 years old, I guess. I had a bodybuilder, quite successful bodybuilder, by the name of Pete, take me under his wing and show me how to work out. I was about 135 pounds at the time, and I just really needed to be someplace else, doing something different. And I glommed onto it like no tomorrow. Just decided that fitness and immediately after that, nutrition were going to be my new thing. And I never really turned into that gym rat. I kind of right out of the gate became really interested in the science, the facts behind this stuff. It just seemed like nobody really knew. And started reading studies right away. Taught myself how to read studies. That was not a fun adventure, but after a few years of effort, you start to understand without a medical degree or a science background how to read studies and look at statistics and things like that. And I think that, like I've said numerous times in lots of different interviews, I think that if you just aren't, if you aren't so attached to your biases that you're willing to look at information, kind of subjectively and just, really, or objectively, and just really look at it and say, what does this mean and how does it apply? I think eventually all roads lead to paleo. So I think how I initially got into it was just, my own personal psychology needing a new avenue, and then from there it was kind of a lifetime of a progression. Now it's been about, I'm going to be 40 next year, so it's roughly 19 years that I've been avidly pursuing more and more information in the realms of fitness and nutrition. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And so it kind of came about as a sort of an outlet to learn and grow, as opposed to cut on another path that could have led somewhere not as beneficial for you.
Yeah. I'm just by nature, I'm just a really passionate person. I'm just one of those guys that, I had a lot of trouble in school with any subjects that I wasn't really interested in, and if I was really interested in it, I'd get the highest grade in the class. A relatively high IQ, I guess, compared to the general public, but it's really hard to teach me anything I'm not interested in. So I had to pursue something I was going to be passionate about. I wasn't going to be one of those guys that could go to work day to day at a job that I half-heartedly liked in order to be able to pursue my passions on the weekend. It just wasn't going to work out. So it's not for me.
I hear you. Same here. So paleo. So you kind of, based on kind of the research you did and the studies and whatnot, it basically kind of led you to understanding paleo. Is that kind of what happened then? It just kind of led you to that?
Yeah, and I just, like I said, I think that if you aren't married to your biases, it just works out that way, because nothing really makes sense when it comes to human nutrition, or actually any kind of nutrition or exercise, when you don't consider the evolutionary processes and natural selection and all the things that create a species. It's been said that nothing makes sense except in the light of evolution. And so it's this perspective of, let's isolate individual problems and try to find ways to treat these individual problems and treating symptoms, or even just, this kind of looking at everything under a microscope as far as your point of view and saying, I'm overweight. Why am I overweight? Let's address this weight thing. Well, it must be thermogenetics, things like that. Or thermogenics. You get like this point where you're not asking big enough questions. Your questions are just too small. You're not asking what does it take to make a healthy human anymore. You're asking individual questions and trying to address individual problems. And you end up in a situation where I talked about in my book, where oftentimes people are whittling on their finger and they're looking for a better Band-Aid, and what they really need to do is put the knife down, but they can't figure out the problem because the questions they're asking are way too small. They're not addressing this grand scheme of what does it take to be a human in peak health? What kind of inputs are involved in that? And what kind of things negatively affect that? Is it just nutrition? Is it just exercise, or sleep and stress involved? There's these big picture questions that I think just keep people from reaching their goals. And in reality, it doesn't make any of this process any harder. It just means your perspective has to change, and then things fall into place for you.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. I think a lot of people, it's kind of, I think it's partially the society we live in. We're used to microwaving things and flying from one side of the country to the other side of the country in a day. So we have this very snap your fingers and everything happens right before you kind of mentality. Whereas the bigger questions obviously are taking a step back and looking at our whole body as a system. And there's a lot of little systems within that. So that does make a lot of sense, and I think that's a great kind of mindset shift for people to have that are looking to improve their health.
It's interesting that we, our moms have got us all convinced that we're these unique little snowflakes, and it's just crazy how hard people resist this concept that we're animals. Just deal with it.
Right.
Nobody would ever take any animal out of the wild and shove it in a zoo, make sure it hardly can exercise at all, and give it roughly 40% of its natural diet, and then stand there and wonder when this thing turned into a piece of crap health-wise. That would just never cross anybody's mind. But I'm not an animal, because I have a sentient mind, and I can build things, and I can go to work and watch TV and listen to music. So none of those rules apply to me. It's ridiculous. We're not baffled at all by the stuff we see in nature that when doesn't make any sense at all when you say it that way. That's an asinine statement. But if you said those animals don't have those diseases because they take enough drugs, that is even more of an asinine statement. You see what I'm saying? So, I mean, like, adding all this logic up, you know, to back to your question about how did I end up here, it's you kind of have to end up here if you start asking the right questions and you stop staying, you know, keeping your blinders on, and you start asking these big picture, 30,000-foot view questions. You end up in a place where you go, you know, I bet heart disease is not caused because our bodies aren't manufacturing enough statin drugs. You know, things like that.
Yeah.
So sorry, there was my tirade on that.
It's fine. So basically, it's just really, for you, it's kind of looking at nature, looking at the animal kingdom, and basically mimicking that is what it comes down to.
I think that's what paleo basically is. Paleo is you know, I said in my book, I don't like to use the words the paleo diet because people immediately associate it with a diet in the sense that, you know, we do diets. We go on diets, and we're the only creatures on the face of the planet to do that. We're, you know, everything else has a diet. And so I think that, you know, rather than doing another diet,